Hello, welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Porky's Romance, released in 1937. It's the 159th in the series, and it's directed by Frank Tashlin. You can find this on the Looney Tunes Gone Collection Volume 3 DVD set, and also on the Porky Pig 101 DVD set. Hopefully there'll be a HD upgrade at some point in the future. In case you haven't seen this one, I can't show you the full thing here due to copyright on YouTube, but essentially Porky is getting flowers and chocolates for Petunia, who is introduced in this short for the very first time, and she basically just wants the chocolates. She laughs him off, and when he proposes marriage, he then tries to do something to harm himself. He falls down, goes into a dream sequence, and just imagines her as, becoming a slob and all that. So it's a very dark short, actually, and I will get into that as well. What you're going to see is a re-edit of the original audio commentary I did before I had to take that down. Then you'll hear some new thoughts from me, and then you'll hear some thoughts from my good friend Austin Cowley, who is a self-professed Tashlin-holic. So he'll give his thoughts on this short, and then we'll conclude. So without further ado, grab some popcorn and enjoy. So this opening here, as Mark explains in the commentary, it's based off a radio show that only lasted for like a year, and it ended up being very influential towards Frank Tashlin and what he was doing at the studio. Mark actually points this out in his commentary, just the design of this cartoon, how round everything is. It's like a modern style, and I never really noticed it before, but I've seen this cartoon quite a few times, so watching it again for the commentary, I'm just looking more at the backgrounds, and it's amazing designs. But this cartoon, aside from being notable in trying to introduce a new character for Porky, Petunia Pig, it's also the last Porky Pig cartoon to feature Joe Dougherty's voice, and you can imagine it would have been just so exhausting to record him, given that he had a real life stutter and trying to deliver particular lines in a certain way, and would have just taken a lot of time. And once Mel took over, of course, it would have been a lot easier for him to record, given that he can control his own stutter. This particular short also showcases just how amazing Tashlin's direction is, especially with all the cuts that he does, and all the angles as well. But I dare say this is not really one of my favourite Porkies. I mean, I love the look of it, and I love the round Porky, as I mentioned in a few commentaries prior, but I don't know, the humour doesn't exactly work for me. Of course, Porky wants to marry Petunia. Petunia laughs him off and just then realises, hey, he's got chocolates, so I'm going to take the chocolates. And then he has this nightmare about the fact that, assuming that if he marries her, that all she's going to do is just, as we say in Australia, sit on her ass all day. But look at the designs of this house. It's pure 30s modern, bliss. See, this kind of humour, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sort of stems from the fact that if you were a man at the time and you were doing housework, you have failed as a husband, or you failed as a man, because that's a woman's job. That's what I understand what was like at the time. It was just, if you wore an apron, that's it, you failed. Mind you, it is a product of its time, and I'm not going to hold it against it.
Time! Munch is on!
Yeah, well, it certainly did munch on. Time certainly munched on. Maybe I've gained a few kilos here and there, but anyway, that's how it is when you get older. You can't get rid of the weight. But that reference, by the way, is to the saying, time marches on, and it certainly does, getting the grey hairs and everything, and I figure by the time I finish all of the Looney Tunes reviews, I'll have nothing but grey hairs. But in any case, I'll do my best to try and speed things up, yeah? So, as mentioned in the track, look, this is the last Porky short by Joe Dougherty, and I can imagine once they had Mel Blanc in the stable, what a relief it was that he could do his own version of Porky, which, he could just control, he could, change the style of talking, and and of course he did his own thing where he would try and pronounce something, and then of course he would then just be like, you know what, I'll call it something else. So that's something that Mel brought to the table, and that's pretty much what any talented voice actor can bring to the table. At least you can control things for purposes of recording. Because even in this short, Joe doesn't speak that much, but I can imagine that little bit that they had to get for this short would have been just a frustrating affair, as is with the previous shorts. Because if you look at him, he doesn't speak much in them, and yet it would have probably taken them many hours just to get that, But in any case, this is the first appearance of Petunia Pig. And as per Keith Scott's book, she's voiced by Shirley Reed. I thought it was Bernice Hansel, but, the internet, amazingly, it was wrong this time, I know it's crazy, isn't it? But in any case, I'm glad to be corrected on that. And Mel Blanc did the yell part, so similar to how in What's Up, Doc, he did the yell for Arthur Q. Bryan, when he's like, smug, So anyway, and it says in his book that it's a Tommy Mac expression, that yell, and I'm not as familiar with that, so if you know more details about that, definitely let me know in the comments below. I'd definitely like to read that. So yeah, they would create Petunia, and she would appear in a few shorts in different roles. I think one, she becomes a sister, another one, she becomes another, I guess, lover for Porky, but she was... Anyway, it's all different. They clearly weren't really sure what to do with her, except to be, a female Porky Pig, and just assign her to whatever role is appropriate. But her character never really took off. She really had a better presence in the comic books, and of course, later on, starting from the 90s up, she'd be used more often in other media. Obviously, you don't want to have it all male cast. You want to, diversify your cast of characters, and yeah, so she's definitely, I wouldn't say a huge breakout character or anything, but they definitely are trying to do more varied characters. So a few references, I first of all, I have to point out the diamond part in the shop windows, like, diamond guaranteed to be genuine by the American Glass Company. I thought that was pretty funny. But an actual reference, though, that whole Martha Washtub's candies, that's a reference, I believe, and I could be wrong. If I am, let me know. It's to the Martha Washington candy, and I believe they even have a store, but it's basically a reference to a coconut bonbon. So, coconut bonbon, which makes sense. I mean, Porky looks like he's just got a whole box of bonbons, so there you go. Later on, aside from the fact you do see the license plate saying boob, I mean, I guess it's part of the dream, right? But anyway, but after we see that, and, we were at the Honeymoon Hotel, and that refers to the song from the movie Footlight Parade, which is also the title for the very first Colour Merry Melody short, by the same name, Honeymoon Hotel. And Taschen, I believe, even animated on that one too during his first period at Warner's, so it's a nice, interesting little callback there. And the song even plays in that scene as well. And, we end the scene with a bit of an interesting time for Porky and Petunia, and I'll say no more on that front. And later on, we do see the whole rolling pin bit, and I've since learned that that's basically just a vaudeville thing that was done on stage, when it's like, uh-oh, we've angered the woman, and, she would have the rolling pin, and from there. But here's the thing about this short for me. This short is definitely a short that I admire more on a technical and a design point of view. And it really is amazing. I mean, the Art Deco in this is just fantastic. If you're looking at the, Petunia's real home, if you're looking at all the shop fronts, and of course, even the dream version of whatever house or apartment or whatever that they live in later on, and it's just incredible. And I mentioned in the original commentary, I didn't actually keep it in the re-edit, but I did mention that it would be interesting to have an art book of these backgrounds, and I'd be probably first in line to get that, or maybe second. My good friend Austin Kelly would probably push me aside and be in the front of the line, but anyway, either way, it would be a nice little thing to have, and it's just absolutely incredible. You know, this is similar to me being in awe to the backgrounds in Sleeping Beauty. I mean, it's on that level for me. It's absolutely incredible. But I do have some problems with this short, and I think for me the biggest problem is not so much that there's less laughs here. I don't need to see a short where it has to be from start to finish just laugh after laugh, laugh after laugh after laugh. Like, say, a Tex Avery short. You know, I mean, even Tex Avery made some sweet shorts that wasn't laugh after laugh after laugh. I can admire shorts that can do something a little different. But here, it's the problem I have is I think Petunia, she's just so damn unlikable. I'm sorry. And her dog, too. Oh, that's such an annoying dog. I'm not a fan of that type of dog. But it's, you know, and I just can't find myself enjoying this show that much because of how unlikable she is. You know, she treats Porky like garbage, and Porky, he's just heartbroken and that. And then later on, we see he's, having this dream sequence, and, I think that's his subconscious trying to tell him, hey, it's probably not a good idea to end up with her because she really isn't a nice person. And of course, the subconscious decides to make the most grotesque thing imaginable, at least, according to beauty standards of the time, not, because of course, haha, she's fat, right? That kind of thing. It's a similar standard where, as soon as a man wears an apron and does the woman's work at home, he's failed as a man, that kind of thing. That's just a product of the times.
All right, I gotta step in here. Normally I stay quiet throughout these, because I'm the one editing this and it's just extra work for me when I'm also trying to find time to work on my own things. But Anthony was so wrong with this cartoon that I couldn't stay quiet. To me, this is one of the most memorable cartoons Tashlin had done in his first stint directing at the Schlesinger studio for a number of reasons. For one, it's very cinematic and dark in general. So dark to the point that I'm surprised that the censors allowed parts of this cartoon to be released. From an obvious sexual innuendo to the thoughts of suicide, you have to wonder how this passed. Maybe it was an off day at the Hays Code. And I love how unique this one is in the Looney Tunes library. Porky being smitten with a girl that, let's face it, is not a good person whatsoever is a somewhat relatable story that a lot of us can experience. No matter what your orientation, I think a lot of us have been in a situation where we were interested in someone who may have just laughed us off. Porky does not handle it at all well, but I think interpreting the message of she's fat, run away is the wrong intention. I've seen multiple films involve a henpecked husband stereotype. Of course, it might not be in the best taste today to have Petunia be fat and eating chocolate, and also feeding her dog too. But I don't think the message is necessarily, oh, husband doing housework means he's not a man. Because in no way does the short show that Porky hates doing housework or is even embarrassed to do so. He's a pretty good guy. There's other shorts later on that Freeling did with Daffy and Yosemite Sam that are more like that, but I don't see it here. More so, I think it's to portray a toxic, unhappy relationship with a girl who, let's face it, Porky was smitten with because of her looks. Was Tashlin making this short out of experience? Who knows? But I love this short for how different it is. I love the opening with Petunia, the actress, and I can tell you from experience directing in a drama class that telling a nervous actress to relax is a very, very bad idea. And honestly, the short starts off really sweet, almost like you're watching a Mickey Mouse cartoon from the early 40s. After they strip the mouse of his entire personality. But it completely subverts your expectations with some very dark depictions of depression and suicide and heartbreak that I don't think you'd see much in a short from the 30s. They still have time for comedy in here as well with the sight gags, and even if you're upset that Petunia is depicted as a fat pig, I don't think any of us could have ignored that obvious connection there. I think there's a lot to admire about this short. And I mean, Anthony hates Shrek, so how much should we respect his opinion here?
But again, there are things I liked about it, and it was really more just from a technical point of view. But I'll let my friend Austin Kelly take over because he definitely likes it a lot more than I do. That's fair enough. We all have different opinions on this. So without further ado, here's my good friend Austin Kelly.
What's going on, everybody? Austin Kelly back again to talk again about one of the best Frank Tashlin cartoons, Porky's Romance. Now, I was watching this cartoon, and it's kind of interesting because I was realizing that there's this fine line between Tashlin black and white cartoons and the Tashlin color cartoons. Now, maybe I'm thinking too much into it, but I see a lot more social commentary or like grittier themes of love or, things about society, Tashlin's own commentary on life in the black and white Porkies than I do in the color cartoons. I feel like a lot of Tashlin's color cartoons, and this especially applies to his 30s work more so, like The Woods Are Full of Cuckoos or Cracked Ice, are sort of experiments in the Disney kind of style, because he was a big fan of Disney cartoons and attributed the Disney success to what made Warner Brothers cartoons work. And there's a beautiful combination of Disney techniques and sort of silly symphony-esque gags in a cartoon like Cracked Ice or The Woods Are Full of Cuckoos, mixed with that undeniable Warner Brothers touch, that individual feeling that you get from a fast-paced gag sequence. As Michael Barrier pointed out, Cracked Ice leads into it sort of like this lighthearted Disney cartoon, but W.C. Squeals comes in, and all of a sudden there's this outrageous plot about alcohol and this fast-paced chase, this experiment with speed, and it suddenly becomes a lot more interesting. But the Tashlin black and white cartoons, which usually featured Porky, a character that Tashlin was not very fond of, and maybe that's what prompted him to have these sort of more adult themes in there, because he had this character, Porky wasn't in the color cartoons yet, and so he's saying, okay, I've got to work with this character that I really don't like, so maybe I can, sort of focus on something else that I'm interested in, as opposed to working on this character, because of course, he did some incredible character work on a thing like Cracked Ice with W.C. Squeals around the same time. But there are a lot of serious themes and topics being addressed in Porky's Romance that kind of shock me, because some of them aren't even played for laughs. I think the most obvious choice to discuss would be Porky is so fed up over this Petunia that's not into him that he goes and tries to hang himself. And it's not like a funny gag where we cut to that shot of Porky, he's got the noose around his neck and he put the ladder against a tree and he's writing a love letter, a goodbye. There's nothing funny about that. And Stallings even playing a sad, slow, on the violin, this variation of The Little Things That You Used to Do, which is a song that they sang at the end of the Coconut Grove, from 36, the Coconut Grove, in the first Freeling cartoon where everyone's crying. So, kind of like this very slow, melancholy thing. And of course, it leads into the dream sequence where there are a couple of gags, but still, on the whole, not a lot is played for laughs in the cartoon, or the overall plot is pretty serious. I'm almost wondering, maybe this is a little out there, if Tashlin was taking his own experience as some girl that he had been with, where he had felt, neglected or had his heart broken, dare I say, even tried to, do something like Porky was trying to hang himself or whatever, but there's something so different in tone, so serious about this cartoon that it's kind of interesting to see what's going on. Because I don't know if there was ever another Warner Brothers cartoon, let alone a cartoon in the 30s that was like that, I mean, we had things about suicide and things about love, but again, usually things that were played for laughs, like, a character will pull out like a very large gun and just hold it to their head after some crazy cartoonish gag has just happened, and that's played for laughs. But there's nothing funny about Porky Pig going for a noose and writing a goodbye to this girl that just broke his heart. So there's a lot of interesting stuff to study in this cartoon about, these themes, and sort of wondering, where did Tashlin even come up with these ideas? Because really, some of them are pretty dark by Warner standards. Not to mention, of course, the famous sequence with Petunia running back for the chocolates, and those quick cuts, and the Carl Stalling soundtrack that is so wonderful, and that was featured, thankfully, by Greg Ford on the Carl Stalling Project CDs. So there's a lot to like, and it's definitely a Tashlin all-time classic that is worth studying and discussing. So great to talk about this one, and hopefully it sort of gets some more recognition, some more praise. It's not one of those cartoons that everyone's always talking about, but again, it's really interesting, almost like an anomaly in more ways than one. So Porky's Romance, go check that out. Maybe once, maybe twice, watch as many times as you want, because really it is great and it's worth it.
Thank you, Austin. So, again, I admire this short from a technical point of view, design point of view, and that sort of thing, but I don't enjoy it as much. But I do agree with Austin on this. I think there's something more here. I think this must have been some sort of thing that Frank Tashlin, maybe something happened to him in his life, and he's just, using what he knows or what he knew, and he decided to, hey, make a short-based experience. And because, hey, he's gone on record saying he didn't really like the character Porky Pig, so what else can you do with the character kind of thing, right? Or maybe he was a friend of his or someone he knew that went into a relationship with a really bad person, and, this is just his way of telling you a story based on what he knew. I don't know. I mean, that sort of thing, of course, is lost to time, but in terms of humor, not much here. There were a few bits I did laugh at, like the whole thing, like why there are all these babies named Porky Pig Jr. for some reason. Yes, it's a dream sequence, I know, but it's just so ridiculous. And, the whole license plate saying boob, because, I guess I'm an immature, man-child, right, for that kind of stuff. But, nah. Look, I'm still going to give this one a 7 out of 10, and it's probably going to be a lot lower than what Austin would have given, I guess, if he gave a rating. But is it worth watching? Oh, yeah. Definitely watch it and learn from it. Just the way the shots are done, not just the quick cuts, but just the shots in general, and that, despite the fact that Petunia is unlikable and so on, this is a great one for budding, not just animation directors, but just directors in general, to watch and admire how Tashlin really put together this story. And, of course, as I mentioned already a million times, and I mentioned again, the beautiful, beautiful design work in this particular short. So, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.